Hi, everybody. Another classroom series for the PCA Sim Racing series. I'm Chris Pies. We will be discussing Spa Francorchamps, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and the Porsche GT3R. This is the fourth, race weekend. It's not really a race weekend because we do bi-weekly races, but this will be the fourth race in the 8-race series for season 10. So anyway, as we were just talking about kind of brake biases and setup on the car, but I also want to keep it open a little bit, especially because I've got to load the replay here in a second. But is there any other questions that anybody has relating to the car, the track, before we do the actual track walk itself? Okay. Well, if anybody thinks of anything, just feel free to chime in. But I'm gonna go ahead and load up the track right now. The big thing about Spa, the thing to remember about Spa is it's kind of one of these epic tracks. I kind of put it on the same thread or on the same level of like Le Mans, let's say, potential like Sebring. It's a long track relative to what we normally will run. Lap times here are going to be well over 2 minutes. So there's a lot of ground to cover here. We've got some really good opportunities to make passes, and we've also got some corners that are not friendly for passing as well. We're running a fixed setup as we are for the entire season. And this particular car on this track is a relatively high downforce setup. So if you're used to driving this car with open setups, you may find that your lap time may be faster in other sessions with that open setup. That's purely down to the drag that this car has on the straightaways, which is really hampering its top end speed. But it makes it a little bit more stable in some corners and less stable in others. But we'll talk about that as well. So I'm finding I'm not the fastest here at Spa. Never really have been. I've done a ton of laps here, but there is always a bigger fish, let's say, including here with me at Spa. There's always somebody that is a little bit quicker than me. But I will show you the line that I seem to find is pretty comfortable for me, and that I've kind of become accustomed to driving here. And I'll share that with you and kind of share the thoughts that I have when I go around this particular track. Now, I did this in a test session with me alone, so I'm not sure if I used the proper pit lane or not. So all the setups or all the specifications with Spa or the track combos that they've got here, the track is the same. The difference is the configuration of the pit lane. So if you're practicing on any of the Spa configurations, you're going to be practicing on the correct track. It's just pit lane and we're start finish where the timing line tends to be. So I believe for the race, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but the start finish line is actually on the front straight. So not what is in front of us here on this particular still image that we've got in front of us. It's around La Source and down the rundown to Eau Rouge. The pit lane is also the entrance is after La Source as well. And then the pit exit is the standard endurance pit exit where you're kind of going up Eau Rouge and going down the Kimball Straight to get onto the track. Is that correct? Can anybody confirm that?
Confirmed.
Okay, cool. Yeah. On this particular one, I think I actually loaded the wrong one, and I've got this setup or this pit lane that's right here, and the start or the timing line is this one right up in front of me. But at the end of the day, it's still the same in terms of the track. So, okay, let's get it started. I'm going to go ahead actually and go all the way around, and we'll start where it normally would be. All right, so this is what's called the rundown. So that was the source, the hairpin. We'll talk about that at the very end of the track. But we're running down to Eau Rouge, and one of the basically what makes Spa. It's the most unique corner on this entire track, and it's very special. It's also high speed, high compression, tons of commitment to go through it properly, and it can get a little hairy until you get comfortable with it. So let's talk about it. So coming down the straightaway, Not really a whole lot to talk about on the lead up down to Eau Rouge. So here's start finish line right here. But the main thing that we need to be focused on here with Eau Rouge is we have to set the car up in a proper spot for the turn, the right-hander that goes up the hill. There's a lot of grip in this car because it's the high downforce setting, or there's a lot of downforce built into it right now. So the car has a ton of grip, and it will actually respond really well to turning inputs to head on up the hill. However, just because you can turn and you've got a lot of grip does not mean you need to use it. In fact, if you find yourself using a lot of steering angle at the bottom of the hill in the compression zone, you will actually find yourself suffering down the straightaway. And the reason is the more you turn your wheel through here, the more scrub and the more resistance you're putting into the car. So your front tires are actually slowing you down because you're turning, rather than a straight car with tires pointed forward are going to accelerate faster. So if you turn too hard at the bottom of the hill, or more than you need to because your line is poor, you will actually lose miles an hour on the way up the hill and all the way down the straightaway. The goal here is to find the straightest line that you possibly can that enables you to do minimal movements with the steering wheel in order to go straight. So another way to put it is you can drive this corner poorly, flat out, just as you can drive it well, flat out. And the only difference is how much steering input a fast driver is using versus a slow driver, even though your throttle is pinned to the floor. So I'll try to explain that a little bit better with the visual. So as we come down, we're going to move all the way to the right side of the track here. And the goal is, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking for this curbing right here on the left side of the track. We can go over 4 wheels over the curbing, and the left side tires can basically be as on this tan bit of curving. So as we come in, it's a little bit of an early turn in. I'm in 5th gear. It feels like I'm in the grass, but obviously I'm not. But you can get way over to the left to try to open the corner to go right. So you're trying to extend the corner as much as you can, increase the radius so you can take it flat out. Again, 5th gear, 100% flat. Once you hit the compression zone, or once you cross over the curbing here, we're going to start tipping in the car to the right side. And it's a relatively aggressive turn in, but it's not like too aggressive. I don't know how else to describe that. If we look at my steering input down here at the bottom, you can see my turn in is just to there. That's it. So I'm just going like to that. It feels like I'm turning a lot harder, but I'm not. And the car is, what's happening is the car is compressing into the ground right at the turn in point. So the front end really bites in really well. And the goal for me is to basically put my right side tires nibbling this candy stripe curb on the right side on the way up. So as you can see here, there's the nibble of the curb. And then as soon as I nibble this curb, I'm going to already start opening my hands because I want to create as straight a path as possible. And I want my tires pointing straight because the car will accelerate more quickly doing that than overturning the car and then turning it over to the left. So I straighten the car out as much as I can. And then when on this curbing here on the left, so long as we keep our right side tires on the candy stripe curbing, it's not a 1X. So this is perfectly fine. And in fact, this is the fastest way through here. There will be a bit of a bump as the car bottoms and flattens out from the track surface. And then there'll be a bit of a bump when you get back up on the track. But this is the fast way through here. Straight as possible. You'll have to have a little bit of a turn on the way out, but we want to use 100% of the track. We don't want to pinch any of these corners off, and use all the curbing on the exit in order to try to generate as straight a line as possible to maintain our speed. If we find ourselves coming through here, the tendency sometimes, especially with folks that aren't as familiar with this track, is to turn in here, everything's fine, but then keep turning, and end up over here, right of where my car is right now, and then find themselves taking a left, steering the car left here at this point, and treating this like another corner, and basically, keeping their right side tires on the track surface. Normally that's what you should do, but on this particular track and on this particular corner, the straighter we can make this, the better. You will get a 1X if you put all your wheels over the candy stripe curbing. So over here would be the 1X, and if you go too far over, you will get a slowdown. So just be aware of that. On the exit, you will get a 1X if you go 4 wheels over, completely over the white line. So this is still fair game. And then the other thing we need to be aware of, this is pit exit. If there is a car that is coming out here at pit exit and you're going to meet them right here, you need to yield to them. Notice the blend line and the way the shape of it. The pit out car does not have to yield for cars on track. This is their lane to drive on. You can drive through it if there's no one coming out of pit lane, but if there is a car right here in front of you, you can't just drive into them and expect them to stop to let you go by. Your path is left of the blend line, and that is your safe path. If you're coming out of pit lane, you need to keep it right of the blend line as you get onto the Kimmel Straight. Any questions about Eau Rouge? It's the most unique corner here. It's a great one. You just need to get repetition to get comfortable with the feeling of the compression and your visual cues on your way up the hill are really important because it's completely blind.
Chris, I have a question on the starts, because you got to start going up this thing. And I was doing a practice race, and as I was turning in, there was someone kind of in my blind spot on the second right turn, and I hit them, or they hit me. I mean, I don't know who was really to blame there, but
yeah.
You just have to take it wider, I guess, because you don't. I mean, if there's a car like behind you in your blind spot on the start.
So yeah, no, that's a really good point, because if we're doing, I believe it's a standing start, so we're starting on the way into here. So there's going to be it's going to be very, very crowded down here at the compression zone, and it is a corner that really only has one line, despite the track being relatively wide. My biggest advice I could say is do everything in your power not to take this too wide. That's when things happen. This is a single line corner. Obviously, you can take it too wide, especially at the beginning when the speeds are relatively low, because you're run down to this depending on how far back on the start you are. You're starting from a dead still or from a standstill, right? So you're going to be going maybe 60% of the speed that you would on a hot lap when you're coming down it the first time. But do whatever you can to try to make it as single file as possible, even on that start. And if that means that you have to get out of the throttle and let the guy that's next to you go ahead in front of you, I'd say go ahead and do that for two reasons. One, it's risky if you're too wide through there, because that's when people start to bang doors, especially going up the hill. Two, whoever's in second going through Eau Rouge and getting onto the Kimmel Straight is the one that's at the advantage, because you have this huge straightaway that you can draft off the other car and pass them easily and get by them before you get to the next turn. If you go too wide through Eau Rouge and Redillion, then you're going to be slow. You and the person you're next to are going to be slow all the way down the Kimmel Straight, and it's going to let everybody that's behind you catch you and everybody that's in front of you get away from you. So do everything you can to be single file.
Thank you.
I know it doesn't always work. Sometimes you just find yourself side by side with someone. If that happens, if somebody is side by side with you and you don't know where they are, so let's say you're here and somebody's over here, and you're going to be taking this too wide all of a sudden, and you don't know who they are, or you're not comfortable with that, take the out, so to speak. Look where you can escape a bad situation. And guess where you can escape a bad situation? Over here on the left, especially if there's a car on the right side and your spotter's telling you, if you have to cut this, I would much rather cut this than bang doors and end up spinning and hitting the wall and causing a huge mess. You have a huge amount of track out here to the left that you can just straight line. Yeah, you'll have a slowdown. Yeah, you'll have to give up about a second on the way down the straight. But guess what? You're still racing. And you can make that up over the course of the hour. But if you're in the wall, you can't make that up. So smart survival, that's all that matters, especially on lap one. But great question. Anybody else through there? Okay. Coming down the Kimmel, as I was saying, the car that's in second place that goes through those first set of corners gets the draft all the way down the longest straightaway on this track. You're going at a huge clip. You're flat out. At the bottom of the hill, you're in fifth gear, 100% throttle, which means you're accelerating all the way down, and you basically hit terminal velocity about halfway down this straightaway. If you're drafting, you get a little more miles an hour, plenty of opportunity, especially if you come out right on your opponent, to move over and pass them before you even get to the brake zone of the next corner. If you are the leading car coming down the Kimmel Straight and it's early on in the race and somebody's right up on you and they pop out and they're going to make a pass, in my opinion, it might be a good idea to give a little bit of a lift going on into the brake zone, let them complete their pass, and then tuck in behind them and follow them around for until you get another opportunity. If you go too wide for very much of this track, you're going to start losing time for every corner that you go too wide in. It's very tempting to do here because the track is wide and it can be done, but both cars will be very, very slow. So if it's the last lap and you're fighting for a podium position, yeah, of course, go too wide, battle it out. If you're on the second lap and there's a car behind you that pops out and he looks like he's going to make a pass, probably not going to fight it because I don't want to just beat him. I want to beat everyone in front of me. So it's going to slow me up if I fight him on lap 2 or 3. So keep that in mind. That's the kind of the macro ideas and the thoughts you need to have when doing a race. It's coming down to the right-hander here at the end of the Kimmel. We have a really good-looking brake zone. We've got the 100 board here. We've got the start of a candy stripe curb. We've even got a white line just to make it painfully obvious of where a good brake zone is. You can brake depending on your comfort level all the way up to the white line, and depending on how good a run you got down the Kimmel. If you're in somebody's toe and you're going 5 miles an hour faster than you normally would, you'll have to brake a little bit earlier because you're going faster. Or if for some reason you got a bad run out of a Rouge in the first set of corners and you're going slower, you can probably brake a little later, or if you're trying to save fuel and you're lifting and coasting. But in general, 100 board is a great spot to be looking for your brake marker. We're going to be doing threshold braking, so we're going to be slamming that brake pedal and trying to slow the car up. This is, if you're an ABS guy and you really like to be an ABS, here's your opportunity to kill that pedal and hit it for all it's worth. As we start to transition into the right-hander, we're going to start bleeding off that brake pedal, and it's just a traditional trail braking scenario. The turn-in point's going to be towards the end of the curbing. As you can see here, I've already started to make my turn-in. So it's before the end of the curbing, but not too much before. And then what we're going to do is we're going to downshift down to... I've been experimenting with third gear and second gear here. I think second gear is the one I want to be in. But I'm trying to delay going into second until as late as possible. So I'll actually probably be in third for the beginning part of this. We want to use as much of this curbing as we can. We can get 2 wheels up over the curving on this tan spot before we would even get a 1X. So long as our left side tires are on the correct side of the white line, we're good. And the more we can get up on this curbing, the basically the increased radius that we've increased the corner, so the more speed we can carry through. We don't want to track all the way out to the left because we need to turn left as well. If we're too far to the left, it makes this next corner really difficult to keep it nice and tight. The only corner that matters in this selection of corners is the final right-hander leading down into the hairpin. Everything before that is kind of just throwaway setting up for that. So this corner is setting up for this left-hander. This is the reason why we pinch it a little bit. And then this corner is setting up for the right-hander, which is why we also pinch it here as well. We don't want to go past mid-track because we need to get... Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Because we want to get as close to the left side of the track here as we can in order to set up the right-hander like this. So this is the corner that matters because it leads on to a little bit of a straightaway. This is the one that we want to be set up properly for. Don't feel bad if you can't get all the way close to the curbing, but we want to be on the left side of the track to set up for it. Also be aware there is a bit of a transition and a bump that if you get too close to the curbing, it's somewhere in this area. It's like right at turn in that you'll notice if sometimes you can catch it wrong. And if that happens, the car bounces right when you're turning in and the car doesn't want to turn. Just try to figure where that out is and try to avoid it. I only hit it maybe once every 30 laps. So it's very small and it's a very peculiar spot, but just be aware that it does exist somewhere out there. Much like the first right-hander coming off the Kimmel Straight, this right-hander is almost identical in terms of feeling, except rather than braking down to it, we're going to actually be accelerating through it. But we're going to put our right side tires up on the curb, use as much of it as we can, and touching the grass, keeping our left side tires on the tarmac. Track out, we're going to use all the curbing. Even though we've got all 4 tires over the white line, be sure you consult the rules so you can actually see where all the track out points are. They're pretty good with this little informational panel that's under the rules tab. But basically the crux of it is, so long as you got your tires on the candy stripe rumble strips, you're going to be okay. If you go over the candy stripe rumble strips or get close to the edge of them, that's when the 1Xs will start to pick up. So this is perfectly reasonable right here.
Yeah. Chris?
Yes.
At what point do you downshift into second, and at what point do you upshift back into third?
Yeah, good point. Okay, so let's come down here. So let me listen real quick, and I can tell you. So in this particular lap that I did, I kept it in third all the way around. I did not ever go into second. That's what I was saying, was I was experimenting with kind of going into second sometimes, staying in third other times. There's pros and cons for each one. If you keep it in third, your momentum tends to stay higher. Anytime you downshift to another gear, the tendency is for as soon as you grab that next gear, the engine RPMs go up, the transmission engages, and the higher the RPMs, the more resistance the drivetrain has, and the more the just static the car is going to slow you down without the brake pedal. So the higher gear allows there to be less resistance in the drivetrain and allows the car to slow down less going off throttle, basically. But the trade-off is that if you're in too high a gear, when you go back to gas, you're not going to get the acceleration that you would be expecting, or that you would expect, or that you would want in that higher gear. So in this particular lap, I left it in third gear. In the laps that I was going into second gear, what I was doing was I was coming down here. I'm downshifting through here. So downshift, downshift, downshift to third gear, turn in. I'm leaving it in third gear over this hump. Brake it again, or lift off the throttle, downshift to second gear, and then pick up second gear through here, and then upshift to third right here before I hit the curbing. So it was a little bit of a short shift. So the only time that I'd be using second is this little transition from here to here, basically to the turn-in point. That was the only little squirt of second gear. So try it either way, whatever feels best for you. If the track is cooler than the 105 degrees it is when I was practicing, I always leave it in third gear. I never go to second because I can carry more speed due to the grip. But right here, I was playing around with the idea of going to second and going back to third. But my mantra and my philosophy is always, if I can keep it in a higher gear and maintain my speed and not cost me lap time, I will always leave it that way. So I hope that helps. Coming out of that corner, we're obviously in third gear. Coming down, we'll go all the way to fourth gear. Coming into this downhill hairpin / carousel, however you want to call it. Is this no name or the next one no name? Well, one of them's called no name. Again, much like the brake zone, and you'll notice a theme here, much like the brake zone at the end of the Kimmel Straight, we've got the candy stripe curbing. We don't have any friendly signs or stripes across the road, but we have this wonderful visual of the candy stripe curbing, which is perfect for the brake pedal. So front of the candy stripe curbing, that's my brake. We are going downhill, off camber, all the way around this corner. So the car is going to do two things. It's not going to want to slow down, and it's not going to want to turn in. So we have to feel like we're going to come to an absolute crawl to get this car to actually turn around this corner, because everything is running away from us. Hard on the brakes. Multiple lines through here. There you can do the two main ways, and then every permutation between the two. You can drive it in nice and deep, and then try to diamond the corner out here, and then get a run coming out of the corner on the backside, but that leaves you susceptible to dive bombs on the inside. Or you can dive the car down really tight to the curbing and just ride the curbing, which is the shortest distance around the corner, all the way around, and keep it nice and tight and tidy. Again, whatever feels best for you and most comfortable for you. I tend to do like a little hybrid between the two. So I will hit it I've already started my turn in, and my idea is almost like a double apex. So I'm going to apex somewhere early on, let the car drift out to mid-track, and then apex really late as well. The key here is we need to maintain our so this is my first apex. The key is we need to maintain our momentum as best as possible. And the way we do that is it is very tempting to stay on the brake all the way around the corner, with a significant brake and keep it trail braking. But what tends to happen is you tend to overslow the car. At some point, what you need to do is you actually need to get off the brake and let the car roll through the corner. It's going to continue to slow down because you have steering angle in the car, but you're also going downhill, so it's not going to slow down that much. And we just use basically the scrub of the front tires to maintain that speed. And then we're just patient, letting the car rotate through the corner until it takes that final set. We apex it late back here somewhere around the corner, and we pick up the throttle. When we pick up the throttle, we always want to be adding throttle. We don't want to add throttle and then come out of the throttle and then go on again. Basically, we have to be patient enough to when we add throttle, it's just always a commitment and it's a squeeze on the throttle, not on off.
Do you have a sight line for when you apply throttle?
Yeah, my sight line is I'm looking through the corner. So let's go to cockpit. So when I'm coming down this corner, my first one is I'm looking down here at this first apex that I want to hit. And then the car feels like it's going to joint, or it's going to come out. On this particular lap, I didn't come out very far. I kind of kept it pretty tidy. But I am looking. You can't see it. I have triple monitors, right? So you can see my cursor here, but now it goes off because I'm looking at my other monitor. But I am looking through the corner. I am looking as far to the right as possible. So if you're in VR, turn your head. You're looking for track out, and it's beyond this Armco that's off to the right. You can't see it. If you've got triple monitors, you want to be looking on your right monitor. If you don't have a big field of view and you can't see all the way out there, you're going to be looking right at the edge of your monitor until you can kind of see what's going on. And the idea here is I usually start picking up the throttle when I can see the candy stripe curbing over here on track out. And it's a very slow add of the throttle. As you can see, I'm just starting to feather it on. And then as I see more and more of this curbing, that's when I start feathering it out. Because as I add throttle, the front end of the car is going to become light. The car is going to understeer out and push to track out as it accelerates. And I want to match that with when the car would end up there. The car is going to end up at track out on the left side of the track because it can't go anywhere else, not because I drive it there. My hands are consistent all the way through the corner. The only thing that's changing is my throttle input. And then as I come out of the corner, I'm full throttle, open my hands to accept that full throttle and get the little short run through here. I don't particularly like getting all the way over to the left side of the track on track out. I think it's kind of wasted time because we need to get over to the right anyway. So I tend to kind of try to keep it at just a little over halfway from mid-track to about this point. I don't want to be out here on the curbing because I'll have to move the car all the way over to the right to set up to go left, and that's just extra distance traveled. So I just wait a little bit longer on the hairpin for the car to get that final rotation before I finally get on throttle. If I had to say to err on the side of pinching this corner off because you're going to be on the right side of the track or closer to the right side of the track, then if you get on throttle too early, you run the risk of getting up on this curbing, potentially running out wide, getting up into the grass and stuff like that. If there's any Brands Hatch fans out here, people that like to run Brands Hatch, it feels a lot like Druids, which is the second corner of Brands Hatch. Obviously it's a little bit quicker than that corner, but I always get the same kind of feelings going through this corner like that one. Okay. All right. Any questions to the first third of the track? So we're about a third of the way through. All right. Hearing none. Continuing on. All right. Coming through the left-hander. I think this is no name, actually. We want to get the right side tires and tickling this curb on the right in order to open the radius of the corner as much as possible. And it's like a tiny little dab of brake as we're turning in to get the nose to put the weight on the nose to get a good solid turn in. And then as soon as we can kind of get that turn in, get the car kind of rotated, we're going to get back on the throttle. So let me back it up just a touch. As you can see here, I'm going to really slow it down. There's a little dab of brake on entry to get the nose to set in. And then as soon as I'm done with that, boom, back on the throttle. The earlier we can get to throttle and maintain that throttle on the way through, the faster we can go through this corner. I use the phrase driving through the corner. We're attacking the corner. We're driving through it. We're accelerating through the corner. We're not braking down to the apex. We're doing our braking and getting our rotation done really early up here, so we can get the car pointed in the right direction so we could accelerate through the corner. This is a corner that if you have a lot of rear bias, it's really beneficial, because that rear bias is going to help rotate that car on entry and get the car pointed in a really good spot so you can get on throttle sooner. At apex, much like the other curbs, we can take a little bit of curbing on apex. Just understand that we'll bump the car a little bit. The more you take, the more significant the bump. The less you take, the more smooth it's going to be. Just you have to be prepared for it and figure out where your balance is in terms of your comfort level of going through those bumps while under throttle. On exit, it is very easy to pick up a 1X here if you go too fast through here, but this is not a 1X. You can, as long as you keep keep your left side tires on the candy stripe curbing, you're good. As soon as your left side tires touch this little metal grate here, that's when you're going to get a 1X. So this is fine. Any further to the right is not fine. If you get in trouble here, and this actually, I'll point this out. This is a trouble spot in terms of balance of the car. Sometimes it doesn't work out. You hit a bump wrong on the right side curbing if you take too much of it, or you turn in and you clip the grass on the inside here and the car just starts to want to rotate or just get out all sorts of shit out of shape. If that happens, open your hands. Open your hands, get out of the throttle, kind of coast through it, gather control of the car, and use all of this run out that's out here on the right side of the track to get your car nice and comfortable to accelerate, to come back onto the track. It's just a 1X. It's not even a slowdown, but you're going to save the car. If you try to be a hero coming through here and you've got the car doing a drift on its way through and you're trying to fight it, what's going to happen is you're going to snap hook it or snap it back to the right once the car catches and end up in the barriers and ping-ponging across the track and probably get collected by somebody else. Take your medicine, lift, get the car gathered up, take your 1X, and then continue on. All right, coming into Puong. So some of the chatter that I've been seeing on Discord is Puong has been adventurous with the setup in this car. I think what tends to happen is people tend to drive this car with a more spa-oriented setup than what we've got. And so if you're trying to drive a car like that, if you're trying to drive this car like that, you're going to have a rough time here in Puong. The car has a lot of downforce, but once you exceed that downforce, it's very snappy because of the rake that's in the car. So what we need to do is we need to be very, very ginger. When I was talking about at the very beginning of having, of keeping the balance of the car and keeping the car underneath you, this is one of those corners that you have to be nice and quiet with the car. We want to set up, it's a double apex. We want to set it up on turn in as best as we can. And then we have a constant radius with our hands. So we're holding a constant angle with our hands all the way through the double apex on the exit of here. The corner, the characteristics of the corner, it's running away from us. We're headed downhill. There's very little grip on turn in, so the car wants to understeer when you turn in. And then eventually when you get about a little bit into the corner, you get a little bit more camber, so you end up getting some grip back, and that's where the tendency for the car to oversteer is when that grip comes back, it comes back on the front of the car first. So the front of the car all of a sudden grips up, and then all of a sudden you find yourself rotating, and sometimes rotating more than you want. So you just need to be prepared for it if that happens. If you get in a situation where the car starts to feel light or starts to feel out of control, open your hands. You have all the runoff in the world on the outside of this corner. If you try to save it, that's when problems happen. Open your hands, run wide, gather it up, get it nice and collected, and keep on going after that. So in terms of brake zone, I brake about maybe a third of the way down the candy stripe curbing. I do not like getting up on this curbing. I know some people love to put two wheels up on this curbing. I hate it. It unbalances the car, and I just don't like it. So I try to do everything I can to get as close as I can to it without touching it. So I'm about maybe a little bit more than a third of the way down. Maybe even more. So maybe about halfway down, it looks like. And then it's a pretty firm brake pedal, maybe a 6 pedal out of 10. And then as I'm braking, I'm going to start rolling this car down the hill, as you can see here. The goal is to try to apex this first corner somewhere where my cursor is, so around the corner. And there's a lot of entry kind of coasting through this. I'm letting 100% of the grip of the tires be for turning, not for accelerating, not for braking. So I've just basically, I've done brake. I've trailed the brake off very quickly as I'm turning in, and then I'm off the brake pedal and rolling the momentum down the hill through the first apex. So there's the first apex right here. You can see the car just took the front end just all of a sudden started to turn in much more severely, started to rotate through the corner. That's where the camber of the corner is actually picking up, and we're getting that grip on the front of the car, the front axle. But we have a nice wide entry into this corner, so because the front end grips up, I'm not overwhelming the rear tires and I'm not snapping the car. I'm also, as the front end grips up, I'm starting to feed on throttle, which is transferring the weight to the rear tires, which is giving me more grip on the rears, which is actually settling the rear for the drive all the way through the second apex. So you can see at this
and
first...
you're in fourth?
I'm in fourth gear, yes. So as you can see, I've got pretty much full throttle here. I'm just waiting to where my sight picture balances to where what I see to know that I'm going to make the second apex. So it's usually just a little bit after the first apex here that I'm at full throttle. So I'm pretty much there at this point. And then boom, at this point, before halfway through the corner, I'm 100% throttle and I've got that constant steering angle all the way through. The second apex will be, again, around late apex, around the second candy striped curbing. And then we're going to keep opening our hands and try to make it as wide an arc as possible as we exit Puhan to keep the car nice and balanced. So without me stopping it, coming in, braking it about halfway down the candy stripe, tip it in while a little bit of brake pedal, then off the brakes, start feeding on a little bit of throttle once I get that initial rotation to balance the back of the car, and then I'm full throttle through the second apex, accelerating all the way through there, balancing the car, no sudden movements, no jerky motions with the steering wheel, keeping the throttle planted all the way through there. All right, the next little right-left complex is a really fun complex. We've got a really good brake zone in terms of we've got this banner sign that's over here, and we also have the candy stripe curbing over on the left. The brake zone is somewhere in front of that, so like pretty much I'm looking at the banner, and then I brake maybe, I don't know, half a car length before it, or basically as the banner goes across my windshield when I'm in the car. And it's a pretty firm pedal. We're still going downhill, so the car takes a while to slow down. So yeah, I'm going all the way to like an 8 pedal. So it's almost threshold braking into here. And then I'm trailing, and this is a long trail off. Because the goal here for the right-hander is to absolutely sacrifice this corner for the left-hander that comes after. So this first corner means nothing. We want the car to be on the right side of the track at corner exit, which means we have to pinch it off. I like getting up on this curbing if I can. I don't know if I do it on this lap. Yeah, so I like getting all the way up on this curbing because it helps kind of rotate the car as well. And then we just have to be patient. You can see I'm trying to get on throttle, but I know I can't. If I do, I'm just going to wash the front end out. So it's just kind of riding around. And then as soon as I know that I can make it, when I'm more than halfway around the corner, I pick up the throttle in third gear. I don't go down to second in this particular corner. And then I don't want to be any further than this away from the right side of the track. The further right I can be, the better to set up for the left-hander. A little dab of full throttle between the two corners. Back off the throttle to help the front end of the car tuck in because we're shifting the weight forward. But we don't have to touch the brake. And then we turn in. We want to use all of this curb as much as we can. I missed it a little bit on this particular lap. And we have to be very patient until we get around a little bit more than 2/3 of the corner before we can get on full throttle. If we get on full throttle too soon, the front end will understeer out and we'll wash wide and we'll pick up a 1X. And then we want to end up basically right here, left side tires on the candy stripe, right side tires over it to maximize the track out on through here. So let me back it up.
Excuse me, Chris. So all through that section there, you're taking all that through in third from fourth?
Yeah. all in third. I might actually be in fifth coming down this hill. I don't know, but I'm downshifting into third at this point. Bam, bam, third, turn in,
Right
and then
there.
I'm leaving in third the whole way around. It's similar, but not quite the same because it's different characteristics in terms of what the track is doing as the right left after the Kimmel straight. So it's similar, but it's a little bit, the second corner is longer around. So you don't have to slow down nearly as much for the left-hander, but a similar kind of thought path. And we don't have a further right-hander immediately after, so you don't have to pinch the left-hander off. So in fact, it's very different. So ignore that. All right, coming into the double right-handers here, we've got a good brake marker, again, with the candy stripe curbing. Notice the theme of braking just before the candy stripe curbing on almost all these entries. It makes it relatively simple in terms of finding your brake markers here. So what we're doing is we're braking just before the candy stripe curbing. We're going to go down. I like to keep it in third gear through here. You can use second. Just be sure if you do, don't overslow the car. And then we want a very late apex. The tendency is to get down here really early. If we get down here really early, we'll run a risk of running wide on exit. So the later we can make this corner, the better. As you can see here, I'm basically apexing towards the very end of this tan extra curbing on the inside. You can actually get up on this curbing quite significantly and not have it affect you at all. In fact, it opens the corner up. I just understeered pretty heavily through here on this particular track, or this particular lap. This lap is actually pretty gnarly now that I'm looking at it. But the idea here is we want to get on throttle as soon as we can and hold that throttle. And I make another mistake here, so I'm showing what not to do. So you see I'm full throttle here at apex, and then I actually come out of the throttle because I realize I'm not going to make the corner. So I come out of throttle to get the nose to tuck back in, and then I get back on throttle once I get on a better line. If I would have stayed full throttle, I would have probably dipped my left side tires in the gravel. So we don't want to do that. I could have fixed that by either slowing down more at this point or turning in a little bit later and having a later apex on the way through. We can use all of this as long as we keep our right side tires on the candy stripe curbing. Upshift into fourth gear. I think I'm in fourth. Let me just double check. Oh no, I'm still in third. So third, and then fourth is right here. So on my way into this corner, but this is 100% flat. So basically when we go to full throttle right here, when we do it right, we're full throttle from there all the way to essentially Blanchimont, which is the next corner that we'll think about. So this is full throttle, late apex to that corner, that right-hander. So we can make this corner. If you turn in too early, you'll run wide through there. And so if you end up running wide on the exit of that corner, it's because you turned in too early for that previous corner. All right, any questions for the middle part of the track before we get to the last few corners? Okay, cool. All right, so now we're coming up to Blanchimont, everybody's favorite, the fast left-hander in sixth gear. Car is screaming. We're going 153 miles an hour, and we're taking basically a straight left-hand corner. We've got a lot of grip on Blanchimont, not necessarily on the entry, but at the apex point, you can actually see a lot of the track right here, which means it's cambered, which is helping us turn, right? But much like Puong, the part of the car that gets to the camber first is the front end of the car. When that happens, that means the front end of the car grips and the front end of the car turns. The rear of the car still hasn't made it to the camber yet, which can lead to an over rotation on entry, which leads to the spin, right? So I'm sure anybody that's practiced so far realizes that once you're at this point in this car, it starts to get really light through here, right? And if you make any sudden movements, the tendency is for the car to spin on you and hook on you. So on this particular lap, I took it absolutely 100% flat, so it can be done. But in order to do that, you have to have a really good line. So you can see here on my entry, my right side tires are as close as I can possibly be to the grass without being on the grass. Don't touch the grass, because that is a quick way to get a tow back into the pit lane, because you'll lose control on entry. So we want to be as close to the grass as we can get without touching it. And then we want to have a nice, wide, slow entry. And the goal and my vision on this one is this curbing. I want to put my left side tires basically right at the first part of this curbing, nice and wide and nice and slow. And then as soon as I get down to the curbing, I'm opening my hands to increase the grip in the tires on the way through. So I'll slow it way down. So I've turned in. There's that apex point right here. I'm aiming for the first part of the curbing, but because of how fast we're going, you can end up going a little bit further. And then all I'm doing here at this point is my eyes are way down the track. So I'm looking way down here. I'm looking where I want the car to go. And then I start opening my hands as soon as I come through there to give the grip back to the tires to finish the turn. So you can actually see here, I've got my steering wheel completely straight at this point, but the car is actually still turning. It's because it's trying to rotate, and I'm trying to not fight it, but I'm trying to ride the little bit of a slip angle that I've got through there.
Hey, Chris, let me ask you a quick question. Okay, coming through here, I've taken it both and fifth and sixth gear. Fifth gear, it doesn't quite, at least for me, at the speed I'm going, slow. It doesn't really seem to peg out the rev limiter. So sometimes I feel if I take it in six, it's going just a little too slow. It's like maybe I got 2 red dots on the RPM indicator.
Yeah.
At the most. So I'll take it either way. But the question I wanted to ask you is that, what do you think about taking fifth through here? And if it does it affect having a car in front of you? Say like you're 2 cars in front, you're the third car. Any aero wash issues? Any loss of downforce because of aero wash or anything?
Absolutely. If you're behind somebody coming through here, you can't take it flat. Because what's enabling us to take this flat is the high downforce of the car is enabling us to kind of turn it in there. If we have someone that we're following, we're going faster than we normally would, and we don't have clean air on the nose of the car to enable, and the big wing to enable us to do the turn the same way. So we have to lift for this turn. And when I say lift, I mean, and I think I did it earlier on, so let's go. This is a similar time lap. Yeah, so when I say lift, I mean like this. So right here, there's my lift. So I've lifted right at the turn in point, just a little bit before the turn in point, and it's to maybe go at 70%. And then once I get the car straightened back up, boom, I'm back on full throttle again. So it's just a tiny bit of a lift on the way in and holding it, so maintaining throttle, and then back on it. If you're having trouble with this corner, and frankly, this is probably what I'm going to end up doing in the race most of the time, unless I'm really confident with the way the car feels, is this little lift. A little bit of a lift, maintenance, back on the throttle. I like six gear for another reason too. In the GT3R, if you've got 2 red dots on your RPM meter, so all your lights are lit up, that's your shift point. There isn't a further, like in the RSR or the GT4 where the lights turn white as the red line, ultimate red line. The GT3R, your 2 red lights that's it. Yeah, you've got some more RPM on the top of it beyond that, but there's no difference. At some point, you're going to hit the rev limiter when you get past that, but there's not going to be any visual indication that you've gotten to it. And in fact, from what I've seen from the data, when you have 2 red lights on your dashboard, that's when you need to shift, because if you go further in the RPM beyond that, you're actually losing power. The engine is actually starting to fall off at that point. So
it's not always what you hear, because I can hear the engine still. I go, well, heck, I still got more headroom.
Yeah. I
feel like, look, I got another couple hundred RPM there. I got a little more speed, more power, whatever, and I'll peg it out.
Now, this car seems to have a little bit more torque lower down, and it tends to run out of puff really up at the high end. So I've done some testing on my own where it seems like on straightaways, for instance, if I let it run all the way to where I know where it sounds before it hits rev limiter, versus shifting when I see that second, when I get all red light or when I get all lights on the dash, I tend to get another little, like a mile an hour or 2 difference on a big straightaway like Kimmel by doing that.
Okay. All right. So I hold right here. Okay. So now let's go and talk back after, I'm going to say it wrong, Eau Rouge, coming up that long straight after the Eau Rouge. Do you hold fifth all the way up to
Yes.
the
So
right?
that is a different situation when we're talking about the first part of the track with Eau Rouge. I hold fifth because as soon as we start going up that hill, you actually start losing speed. So your RPMs actually dip below full
Right.
LEDs, right? So you could shift up to sixth right at the base of the hill, but once you do that, once you start going up the hill, you're actually going to be slowing down. So at that point, it makes sense just to leave it in fifth rather than shift up to sixth and then back down to fifth. We want to try to limit the shifts as much as possible. It's easier on us. It's easier on the car. But in general, like for through Blanchimont, from what I'm noticing, going up to sixth tends to keep the car more balanced as well. There's less torque going through the rear tires. And the last thing we
Well,
want to do through this corner
I,
is
I just noticed that as you went through there, on this one here, you lose about 4 miles an hour.
yeah,
You go down to 150.
yes.
Okay, whereas on the other one where you hit it full out at sixth gear and no blip on the throttle or no reduction on the throttle.
Well, this isn't
You
sixth gear
actually,
as well. This isn't sixth gear as well. Even though
oh,
I
okay,
lifted, I'm still
all
grabbed
right.
sixth gear right here, and I just did a little bit of a lift to scrub a couple mile an hour to get back on it. But I'm in sixth gear through here. And the other one that we were talking about, so let's just see the difference. Oh, sorry. So this will show you a difference between a lift and a flat out. What's the speed difference? So exactly the same, 154. So it's 4 miles an hour difference at apex between the two, from a little bit of a lift versus 100% pinned. So I don't actually lose any speed when it's pinned. So I would absolutely say if you're going to pin it, keep it in sixth.
Got it. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions. But anyway, as I was saying through here, if you're having trouble through Blanchimont in this corner and you're losing the car, just do a little bit of a lift, just a crack of the throttle and then back on. We're not talking a full-on lift. A full-on lift is going to take the weight off the rear of the car and it's going to make it even more unstable. We're talking just a tiny little bit of a lift to keep at least the differential of the back of the car engaged, to keep some weight on the rear of the car as we're accelerating through. And then all we're doing is we're scrubbing a couple miles an hour, so the car is not quite as on edge going through the corner and it's a little more comfortable. Once you turn in from Blanchimont, no sudden movements. This corner is like a T-Rex. If you don't move, it can't see you. So don't do any sudden movements. Nice and smooth through here. Once you've picked your steering angle, for better or worse, that's your steering angle through here. If you turned in too early, don't say, oh no, and start modifying your steering angle. And the worst thing you can do possible is you turn in, realize you turned in too early or you're going too fast, and you just pop off the throttle. If you do that, you're absolutely going to spin the car because you're taking all the weight off the rear of the car right when it's starting to load up, and the car is just going to spin like a top. Turn in, for better or worse, that's your steering angle. If you find the car getting light through here, look where all the runoff is on this corner. It's out here. Just open your hands. If the car starts getting a little twitchy and a little nervous right here, just open your hands. And the more you open your hands, the more grip you're giving into the tires to help turn. Open your hands, run out into the run out here, take the slow down, come back on and save it. There's just so many people that come through here, and myself included. I've done it plenty of times as well, where they try to save it, they think they can save it, and they end up doing the spin, and they end up hitting the wall on the inside, and you're facing the wrong way at that point. Or they do save it and then snap it to the right, and they hit the wall on the right. So this is just a place where it's very, very twitchy. You have to be, if there's any place on this track that is probably like the big danger mode, or the danger area, it's this particular corner, especially if you're in traffic where you've got air going all over the place with spoilers. You want to be safe through here, and keep the car on the track, because that's what's going to lead to success. Whenever I build a setup for Spa, for instance, I build a setup for this. It's like the kink at Road America. The setup is built for this corner, and then once this corner is comfortable, whether it be flat or whether it be whatever it needs to be, but it's repeatable and I have full comfort with it, then I go to the other parts of the track and make sure the setup and tune or fine tune it over there. But at always, I'm trying to make the setup for this corner because that's how important this corner is to take safe. All right, coming down into the bus stop, which is the final corner. We've made it through Blanchimont. Everybody's happy. And we're coming into the final corner. We've got some brake markers, but unfortunately we don't have a 100 brake marker board. We've got the 50 board and we've got the 150 board. The 150 board is has a bridge just before it, so the bridge is a great indicator of, hey, braking is coming, so you don't just kind of fall asleep, which can happen coming down this straightaway. But the bridge is kind of a get ready for braking. You've got a white line here at the 150 board, which is, okay, really get ready for braking. And then where I like to brake is there is a dirt patch on this track. I like to brake just before it, and I will show you if I can. Let's chase. Let's do far chase. So if I get really weird with the angle here, I don't know if we're going to see it, but let's see if I can see it. I can't really see it. There is a dirt patch or a discoloration in the tarmac. You can kind of see it right here. This is like this slightly light area, and it kind of comes all the way over here, just after the line. So it starts right here. It's kind of difficult to see in this particular light, but it's crossed the 150 line, wait maybe a heartbeat, and then brake. And it's where that kind of like right at the beginning of that dirt patch. Try different things for what's most comfortable for you, but that's what I find for me works the best for me. So I'm braking right here. Full on threshold braking is about the hardest brake point of the entire track. We want to take this bus stop from all the way on the left side. The idea is we're going to shift down all the way to first on the entry here. And then we're going to hop off the brake before the apex, because we have this little transition where we slightly go uphill and then it tabletops off. So we have a decent amount of grip right at apex, and then it all falls away. If you take this too fast, the tendency is to end up way too far left, and it makes the left-hander really awkward. So what we want to do is we want to not go any further than mid-track. And in fact, I always try to feel like I'm really late apexing the first one to keep it on the right side of the track to set up for the left-hander. And then the left-hander, again, late apex, roll our speed through, and beware that on the exit, everything is getting really light because the track is leveling off from having some uphill camber at apex. So we get really good turn in, and then all of a sudden the grip just falls away. And you actually see there, I lit up the rear tires a little bit, and traction control saved me. And then, like always, left side tires, keep it on the candy stripe paint, or curbing. On this particular curbing, the 1X tends to come really quickly, even more so. So I just be really careful going any further than this point to try to prevent the 1X. The big thing here is to roll momentum. So get off the brakes is my thought process through here. So off the brakes, roll the speed through the corner, because we can't really accelerate very well over these transitions and elevation. And so since we can't accelerate, just roll the speed through that we already have. So it's very, very precise throttle control through here to not spin up the tires, to make sure we maintain our momentum all the way through the bus stop. Coming up to the other start-finish line, or somebody saying something? Go ahead.
Yeah, was that first or second gear?
That's first
coming
gear.
out of it.
First gear.
Okay. Yep.
Coming down to La Source, the final corner in our configuration that we're running. It's the 100 board. There's also I use this little dirt patch that's right here, or light coloredness on the track is my signifier. So I brake just before the end of it, which is right pretty much at the 100 board. So right there, boom. Again, quick threshold braking, and then start bleeding off the brakes as we get closer and closer to the corner. This is a very, very trail brake, like you trail brake all the way. I tend to trail brake I try to get off the brakes really early into entries of corners to try to maintain my momentum. This is not that kind of corner. This corner is a trail brake like all the way down to the apex, because it's such a tight corner. So you can see I'm still on the brakes all the way to this point. So I'm pretty much at the apex, but still on the brakes. And the reason for that is you can't really see it because of the camera angle, but this is all downhill as well. Everything is running away. Yeah, we've got some camber right here at the apex point, but all the way the entry on the way down, the track is working against us. The car does not want to turn until we get right at the apex point. So you'll notice that right when you get to the curbing, the front end really does turn really well. But we need to get down there first, and that's where the trail braking gets all the way down to where the grippy part of the track is. We want to use all the curbing, get as close to the wall as we can. That's what it feels like in the car. Obviously without hitting the wall. The further displaced we are from that point, the speed we're leaving on the table. The fast way is right side tires on the curbing, as you can see here. And then we accelerate out. Careful not to keep too much steering angle in the car, because much like the bus stop, you can see all the camber here, and then it starts to level back out on the exit of the track. If we keep turning the car as though we have this camber and we get on the throttle, what's going to end up happening is the rear is going to start to step out on exit. We're in first gear through here, and if the rear steps out on exit, it compromises our straightaway speed all the way down the straightaway, all the way down the Kimmel Straight. So we have to get a good run through here. And even you can see even right here, the tire tracks I'm leaving, right? The rear of the car really wants to step out. So we have to be very careful when we add that throttle to not get into traction control. That'll be the fastest way through there. And then that will complete our lap. All right, so what I'm going to do, as I usually do, I'm going to back it up one lap. Is this... Okay, so back it up one more lap. And I will show it from the cockpit so you can see what it looks like. Here we go. So we're going to brake at the light patch. There you go. Down to first gear. Trail down and then back on throttle. Nice and smooth throttle. Opening our hands so the tires will accept that acceleration power we're putting through the rear tires. All the way to fifth gear. We're going to hold fifth gear all the way through this. This is absolutely flat. Nice straight line through here. Not too much turning. Boom, up to 6 when we see the red lights. This is our breather. And we're going to brake at the beginning of the candy stripe curving. There's the brake down to third gear. Hit the curbing. Hit the next curbing. Try to get it over. Turn back in and then back on the power before apex through there. Brake at the candy stripe curbing. Down to second gear. Get it down to the curbing. Late apex, roll the speed through. Start feeding it on. Up to third gear. Little dab of the brakes, then back on throttle on the way through. Brake halfway down the candy stripe curving into Pulong. Double apex. Fourth gear. There's the first apex. Constant radius with the hands. Feeling where that grip is. Brake at just after the board. Candy stripe curving down to third gear. Keep it nice and tight. Get up on that curb if we can. And then a late turn in here. Back on throttle. Delaying the throttle a little bit because the tendency is to wash out. Brake at the candy stripe curving. Third gear. Get the car down. Back full throttle. Keep it full throttle up to fourth. Late apex there. And start psyching ourselves up for Blanchiment. If we're taking it flat out, or if we're taking it no matter what, we want to have a nice wide entry, quiet entry, nice and smooth. I'm going to back that up because my computer stuttered right there, so hold on, we don't want to see that. So nice and smooth. Turn in, keeping our hands as quiet as possible all the way through there. Brake at about the beginning of that light colored. Down to first gear, off the brakes. Off the brakes, roll the speed through. Full throttle all the way through. There you go. That's Spa. All right, any questions? Cool.
On the back
Okay.
stretch, did you short shift from third to fourth when you're going to the long straight? Was that a short shift I saw?
Right here?
Yes.
No, I'm not. I think I got all, let's see here.
Does it look like a short shift from cockpit view? Third.
I'm third.
Oh,
I've
you're
got
there.
full lights. Yeah. So it's
Okay.
full on. Full on.
Thank you.
The key for this corner though is just a late apex. Super late apex. The tendency is to turn in like right here because you see the curbing and oh, there's the corner, right? So I need an apex here. No, the apex is like back here. So you have to just delay it a little bit later than you think. You can see how late. I'm actually apexing it almost where the grass and the curbing is, right? So if you're before that, you're going to end up running wide on exit. So
Okay. Now, one last question.
absolutely.
Tire wear.
Ah, yes, tire wear.
Dun dun dun.
You can take, I think you can take 3 tires for free. If you take 4 tires, it will cost you like 5 seconds extra in the pit stops. I don't recommend taking 4. I'm always skeptical of 3 as well because I just don't like having an imbalance on an axle. 2 are absolutely free. So see how your driving is. See where the grip, what axle is wearing more than the others, and see if you want to take tires. Remember though, if you take tires, the tires that you take are going to be cold, so that the lap or 2 after you come out of pit lane may be slower than the laps that you were going in, and you have to be cautious because the tires need to come to grip. So especially if you take rear tires, those rear tires are cold. So that first time you come rolling through Blanchimont, right, you're not going to have a whole lot of grip in the rear of the car, and it can be really sketchy, especially with a lot of grip up front because of hot tires. But the advantage to that is that once those tires do fire up, there's more life in them, so ultimately you will end up having relatively more grip than you did if you didn't take tires. It's a preference thing. It's how you drive. I can't say one way or the other because I don't know how. If you're really leaning on those fronts and you're understeering all over, you may burn those fronts up. If you're sliding the car all over the place and the rear tires, you're kind of Tokyo drifting it around the track, your rear tires are going to be the first to burn off. If you're pedaling it nice and smooth, you may not even need tires. So it's a...
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah.
My lowest tire after an hour was 39%, and that was the front left.
Mm-hmm. So
So
yeah, so you're starting to get to the period where you're starting to probably see a little bit of degradation, but only you can answer if it's drivable or not, because at that point it's purely a preference. If you don't feel a difference in the car and your lap times aren't suffering, so you have the lap times are the indicator, right? If your lap times are still consistent with, throughout the entire race, even at 40% tire wear, I wouldn't change tires, because getting new tires isn't going to change your lap times because you've been running on those tires. If you're seeing a drop off, if you're going now a second and a half slower towards the end of the race, and you're really fighting that tire, that front left, let's say, as you said, that front left, every time you turn to the right, the car just is really understeering. It's really difficult to get the car to turn into a corner. Okay, you may benefit from changing that tire or changing the front tires to help turn in, and you may see your lap times go back to what they normally would be. But lap time is the indicator on whether or not your tires are costing you time. And feel. How does the car feel?
So you're saying at 3/4 of the race through, make that decision?
No. Do a mock race, right? Or do a race tonight. We'll have some mock servers up here in a second.
Yep.
Where you can run for an hour, and do the race like that. Do a dry run of the race, and then you'll know at that time, okay, how does the tires feel at the 40-minute mark? And then that will inform you for the race time or the actual race on whether or not you should have the strategy decided pretty much. Like if you watch Formula One, they've got strat A, strat B, or whatever. They have that all planned out before they even start the car on race day. Same thing for us. You should know, hey, my plan A is I'm not going to take tires, or my plan A is I'm going to take rear tires. And that's what it's going to be, unless something outside of the circumstances or some outside circumstances dictate that you're going to change it to whatever your plan B is, which is maybe no tires. But yeah, you don't decide it halfway through the race, because that's hard to do. That's really difficult to do. Great questions.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so I'm going to well, first off, is there any more questions before I get out of the replay on the track or the car? Nope. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna get out of the replay. The server, there should be some servers up, and then there's
Leaf has and zone 2 and 4.
Okay, perfect. So if you want to practice some strategy, or not strategy, if you want to practice things like race starts, like heat racing. So I think the way 2-4 tends to do it is they tend to have a couple of like race starts that'll go for like 3 or 4 laps, and then they'll re-rack them basically via heat racing. Hop into that server, and you can practice that. So you can practice those race starts. If you want to practice a mock race, hop into one of the ones that Leaf has put up, which will be a full-on practice race. And he usually puts up multiple servers, so one for club and pro, and then one for challenge and sport. Just take a look. I'm looking right now. So here's Leafs right here. I don't see a challenge or sport race. So as far as I'm concerned, if you want to jump, if you're a challenge or sport driver, feel free to hop into this server as well. Frankly, it doesn't matter. We're all racing the same thing, and it may actually get you some experience driving with some faster drivers as well.
There is a sport challenge.
Is there?
Group up. Yeah.
Oh, I don't see it on mine. Let's see here. Let me reload. So I see.
I'm in it right now.
Oh, okay. I don't see it. It's not on mine. Anyway, find whatever one suits your fancy. Hop in it. Have fun. That's the important thing. All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.